Hey, this is Ryan from Rocket SaaS, and you're listening to the SaaS Marketing Weekly podcast, the show that gives you actionable marketing strategies and campaign ideas to rocket your SaaS business. And if you want even more SaaS marketing ideas, go to saasmarketingweekly.com to join my free newsletter. Hey, welcome back to another episode of SaaS Marketing Weekly with me, your host Ryan, the founder of Rocket SaaS. And today we're going to be talking about how to get 500 signups to your webinar. Now, as it's January, I imagine a lot of you are thinking of doing webinars this year, whether it's your New Year's resolution to create your first webinar series, or whether you've had success with webinars in 2024 and you want to keep going with them. Now's a great time of year to get that series started. Webinars are still brilliant in the world of B2B. I think they died a bit of a death kind of around the back end of COVID. Everyone was just kind of webinared out. But I did notice that 2024 was a really strong year for webinars. I noticed it for our business. I know a lot of our clients had a lot of success with webinars. And I find that particularly high ticket enterprise businesses, they have to be doing webinars. That has always been one of the keystones of marketing for enterprise and high ticket items. But it can work for anyone. So if you are thinking of doing a webinar, how can you get a ton of signups? Now, I'm able to create this podcast with a bit of authority because all of the webinars that I run in 2024 all got at least 500 signups. And I did it without spending a ton of money on ads. Each one, I spent £1,000 on ads. But actually, the ads didn't bring in that many of the signups. It mostly came from the free channels or the very low cost channels. So I'm going to go through those channels today. There are 6 different channels that I use. I'm going to go through all of those and the overall strategies behind getting loads of webinar signups. Now, the way that you are going to get the most success from webinars, and when I say success, I mean turning webinar registrations into sales calls, into sales, into revenue, is to not think of a webinar as a standalone campaign, as some kind of magic wand to get you leads. In my experience, when I first started Rocket SaaS and I started doing webinars, I didn't get much revenue from them. But when I started to integrate webinars into a content engine and a content funnel, where I had top of funnel educational content above it, which led to the webinar, which is more like middle of funnel. And I retargeted those people to landing pages at the bottom of the funnel and follow up sales outreach. That's when they really started to work. So I describe webinars as more of a cog within the funnel, as opposed to its own sort of standalone campaign that's going to be this magic wand to get you revenue. So certainly think of it like that. And go back to my previous episode of SaaS Marketing Weekly, episode 26, where I talk about how to create a content engine. So if you throw webinars into that mix of blogs, newsletters, LinkedIn posts, videos, interviews, ads, retargeting, webinars can really be a key piece to getting you a lot more customers. Okay, so when you create your webinar, it's very important that you have enough time to market it. And the optimum amount of time is 3 weeks. So if your webinar is happening on the 1st of February, you want to be kicking off your marketing around the 10th of Jan. I see a lot of companies make the mistake of only allowing like a week to promote their webinar, and that's just not long enough. You know, people's calendars fill up. If you look at your own calendar in a week's time, I bet there's a few meetings in there already. Whereas if you look at your calendar in 3 weeks' time, it's probably pretty blank. Because what you don't want to do is someone that could potentially be interested in the webinar sees the advert for it and goes, oh, I'm not free at that time or that date. So you make sure you have enough time to market it. Now, also, you need enough time to create the assets. So if you're going to be creating ads, email newsletters, cold outbound, all the stuff I'm going to teach you to do today, you need that stuff all to be ready to launch 3 weeks before the webinar starts. So depending on how quick your design, content, dev team can put it all together, you probably need about 2 weeks really to put all of those marketing assets together. Therefore, you need to start work 5 weeks before the webinar date. So in my example of your webinar happening on the 1st of February, you need to start creating that content around mid-December. And then all that promotional stuff is finished by around the 10th of Jan. And that's where you hit the button to launch the marketing. So yeah, this is like a 5-week campaign. So make sure you give it enough time. Okay, so what do you need? The main thing that you need is a landing page. And on that landing page, you must have a really awesome hook. It must be a great header. I mean, that's the same for any landing page, but it's particularly important for webinars. If someone comes onto your landing page, reads the header of the webinar, if they're not inspired, They don't think it sounds really enticing. They think it sounds boring, or they don't understand what it is, or it's got some weird buzzword. They're not going to register. So it's critical that you get the right header for this webinar. Personally, I quite like the how to. So how to solve a problem. That's what I like my webinars to do. I like my webinars to be relatively top of funnel. I like them to help my audience solve a burning problem that they have. So you can keep the title quite simple, quite does what it says in the tin. How to solve X problem in Y industry. That's usually my go-to header. Then you obviously need a description about the webinar. I like to use bullet points of you are going to learn the following 5 things by attending this webinar, because you want webinars to be actionable. The best webinars that I've ever done, that I've got the best feedback from, that have the highest number of signups, is where people are going to register for it and they know exactly what they're going to get out of it. People don't like those webinars that appear very fluffy and broad and you don't really know what you're going to get. It's just going to be a couple of people like waffling on about something. If you see a webinar that says you are going to learn these 5 things, by the end of it, you're going to be able to solve this problem by doing these 5 things. That's how you get a lot of signups. So on the landing page, you also want to have information about the speakers. So who is going to be hosting this webinar? What's their background? What's their experience? What companies have they come from? I also like to include a video, like a trailer type thing. A promotional video of you, maybe the co-host as well, just speaking to camera. Again, just going through what they're going to learn on this webinar. Build excitement, make it sound really interesting. And what's good about the video is that they get to kind of meet you in a way. They get to see who you are, see that you've got energy, charisma, and think, yeah, I like the look of that person, I like the sound of them. They seem like they know what they're talking about. I'm going to attend the webinar. It also doesn't hurt to put in the odd testimonial. It'd be great if you had a testimonial from someone who attended a previous webinar saying how amazing the webinar was and how much they learned. That'd be a great thing to get on the landing page. And then finally, you need the registration form that people obviously fill out to register. I much prefer landing pages to have a registration form that is connected to your webinar software like Zoom, connected via Zapier usually, as opposed to a button that says click here to register and then it opens up the Zoom register page. It's just an extra click going to an extra website. It's a bit confusing for some people, like why have I just gone to the Zoom website? So try and, from a technical point of view, keep the form on your landing page. Right, so that's your landing page. All you got to do now is drive traffic. So I'm going to go through 6 different ways that I recommend driving traffic to your webinar landing page. Now, the first one is my favorite, and it's the one that I've always had the most success with, and that is LinkedIn DMs. And you can use an automation tool like Meet Alfred to do this. So you sign up to Meet Alfred and you write a little script that says, hey, first name, I wanted to personally invite you to my webinar, insert title, as I appreciate that you, insert job title, might be suffering from insert problem. I'd love to see you there. It's happening on this day and this time. Kind regards, your name. Something like that. And then use automation software to pump that out to as many people in your target audience as possible. And I find that that has a very high success rate. What I like about it from a LinkedIn DM point of view is it's not as spammy as the usual crap that you receive in those LinkedIn automated bot DM messages. It's not, you're not saying, oh, hey, do you want to have a virtual coffee? Or, hey, you've never heard of me before, let's book a demo. You're saying to them, I know that as you've got this job title, you're probably suffering from this problem. I've got a free webinar coming up, thought you might like to attend. So it's not overly salesy, it's just helpful. So if you fire that out to all of your people that you're already connected with, your first connections on LinkedIn, because hopefully they already know you. If you're active on LinkedIn, then they should know you. And getting a DM from someone that you know on LinkedIn that you are connected with, inviting you to a webinar, you're far more likely to accept. So this channel works particularly well if you are an active LinkedIn user. So this is another one of the benefits as to why you should be active on LinkedIn. You should be posting regularly. You should be making connections, making relationships with people, because when the time comes that you want to do a webinar, you're going to have a ton of people that you can invite that are probably going to accept. But it does work even if you're not that active on LinkedIn, even if people are not connected with you, you can still send that same message to people. It's a very low cost way of doing outbound for webinars. Meet Alfred costs something like $50 a month. You also need LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is a similar amount of money, and you can send a lot of messages to people. So that's my top tip. The other one, which is similar, is cold email. So if you've got a sales team, they're presumably using cold email. You can speak to them about sending a very similar message that I just described for LinkedIn DMs, but using a cold email platform. And the thing about LinkedIn DMs is you're very limited on the number of messages you can send, whereas cold email, you can send thousands of cold emails a day. So if you've got the right cold email engine set up already, you could potentially send 50, even 100,000 cold emails asking people to sign up to your webinar because it helps them solve a problem. And you're probably going to get a pretty decent hit rate on that, much better than those normal cold emails where you invite them for a demo. If your webinar is good enough at solving a problem that your audience has, you're going to get a high acceptance rate. So cold emails work particularly well. The other is email newsletter. So hopefully your brand or your personal brand has got a decent email newsletter that you're sending out weekly emails. Again, go back to my previous episode of SaaS Marketing Weekly about how you can get an email newsletter going really quickly and easily by repurposing content. But once you've built up your own audience, people that read your newsletter week in, week out, they start to know you, like you, respect you. When you're doing something big like a webinar, that is your audience. So you're going to get a decent amount of subscribers from that. The other channel, LinkedIn Organic. Again, this obviously only benefits people that have got a decent number of LinkedIn followers already and are already active on LinkedIn. But in the build up, in that 3-week build up to the webinar, be posting about your webinar at least once per week. And the more active you are on LinkedIn, the more signups you're going to get to your webinar. For most SaaS businesses, most small ones, you're unlikely to get any success from posting it on the company page. So I'd highly recommend that you post it from your personal brand page and you encourage everybody else in the business that's relevant to post it on their page as well, because LinkedIn personal pages get far more engagement than LinkedIn company pages. Next up is ads. So there's Meta ads and there's LinkedIn ads. I do find that LinkedIn ads are very expensive, particularly for webinars. So unless you have a really good retargeting funnel happening on LinkedIn, where you can only show your webinar ads to people that are within your retargeting funnel, you know they've been onto your website, they've engaged with your content already, I would be reluctant to use LinkedIn ads just for a cold audience. I'd be reluctant just to fire up LinkedIn ads for the first time and start promoting a webinar. You're probably going to be paying a £50 to £100 per sign up. Usually too much for most businesses, unless you've got a very high ticket business and this webinar was bottom of the funnel. I wouldn't want to be spending that much amount of money. But you have got Meta. Meta is a lot more affordable. You get much lower cost per click. So I have had much more success on Meta. So give that a go. But the warning about Meta is you do get a lot of crap and just downright spam and just people that haven't got the money to work with you. You get a lot of low quality registrations. So monitor that. Use UTM tags to monitor so you know where your registrations are coming from. If there's too much spam, no decent business email addresses coming through, just learn from it and perhaps change targeting or just don't use Meta ads next time. But it can work. It does work for us at Rocket SaaS. We use it, but it doesn't work for everyone. So just monitor it. And then the final channel, which is potentially the biggest one, which costs you nothing, is piggybacking off of your co-host. So if you're doing a webinar and you've got a co-host from like another brand, if that brand is well known or that person is very big on LinkedIn, a bit of an influencer, encouraging that person or that company to promote your webinar to their network can be massive. So let's say the other person works for quite a big brand and that big brand has got an email newsletter with 30,000 people on it. If you can convince them to do an email newsletter to 30,000 people promoting your webinar, not only is that promotion going out to 30,000 people, but it's going out to 30,000 people where most of them are a new audience to you. Because, you've got your own network, your social organic people on your newsletter, but 30,000 people from another company, another brand, there's 30,000 new people that are going to be introduced to your brand for the first time. So piggybacking is amazing. But not just email newsletter, you can ask them to post it on their company organic page, promote it personally on their LinkedIn personal page. You might even convince them to put some ad budget into it. So yeah, piggybacking off the other person's network is an awesome way to get signups. So that is it. Those are my 6 channels that I highly recommend you use to get the maximum number of webinar signups as possible. Other things you should also consider for doing webinars is the nurturing. You've got pre-nurturing and post-nurturing. Pre-nurturing is the time between when someone registers and when the webinar starts. So you want to send some nurturing sequence emails to kind of get them excited, remind them of the webinar, ask if they've got any questions that they want to ask that you can bring up in the Q&A at the end. So you should get at least 3 nurturing emails and definitely send one 24 hours before the webinar, just to give them that reminder. And then Zoom or whatever platform you're using should send them the 1-hour reminder as well. That's really important. And then post-nurturing is the nurturing that happens after the webinar. So if you want to be sending the recording of the webinar to people, then it's important to get that as soon as possible, ideally within 24 hours. So the first email that you send them the following day says, thanks for attending, or for those that didn't attend, here's the recording that you can watch back. And then you want to kick them into a nurturing sequence. So 3 days later, sending them more thought leadership on similar topics, or it's blog articles you've written, maybe a YouTube video, maybe a podcast, just to keep them engaged, trying to help them solve a similar problem. Then another email, maybe a case study of how you helped one of your clients solve exactly that problem. Then a call to action email. Would you like a free trial? Would you like a demo? So those are really important things. So that's it. I think that's everything that I know about webinars. I've had massive success with webinars in 2024. If you follow this advice, you can do the same in 2025, I'm sure. But if you don't have the resources, the time, the people to be creating webinars, marketing webinars, creating the ads, email newsletters, outreach, all of those things, you can reach out to me and my agency, Rocket SaaS, and we can do that for you as part of your marketing partnership with us. We can help you do webinars and general marketing, lead magnet campaigns, landing pages, managing all your ad platforms, creating you a whole marketing strategy. If you're interested in that, go to rocket-saas.io. You can book a free strategy call with me. Otherwise, I'll see you next week on SaaS Marketing Weekly.